What's that behind us?
Is it a kitty cat? It's a book.
It's our book.
Even better. Look at that.
We have an advanced copy of our beautiful hardcover book, Super Abound, Live the Life the Universe is Dreaming for You. You only get to see it because you're watching this on Secret Place. I love it.
It's a beautiful design. Never written a book before. Never done one
I
in
love that your
hardcover.
first book is a hardcover.
Well, you paved the road,
It took me 3 books to get
got
a
it,
hardcover.
put it in place. Here we are.
Okay. We're going to talk about something I think that's really important today. And I'm just going to foreshadow this by saying you might not like it. Not because it's like controversial or anything like that, but because we are going to offer you perhaps a different perspective to the people in your world. We're going to, because, we are business coaches. So we're going to talk about your business world, your team, your company. We're going to offer you a perspective on the people who we might call tough cookies. Some of our contemporaries may call them uncoachable.
And it's a big question on people's mind because there seems to be lots of them around. Like, what do we do about Bob? He's always talking over me in meetings. What about Carol? She's always late to things. She just won't listen to feedback. Just won't listen. And it's easy to have all these tools of coaching. Maybe you've been following along and kind of building up your own coaching repertoire. Maybe you're a coach yourself, or you like using that with your team and thinking they're just not responding. You get out the big stamp, you get out the stamp, you say, uncoachable. What's the Will Ferrell movie? Where he's irredeemable?
I don't remember what it's called. It's very niche. So
There's
it's
a
okay if you don't know it.
there's a whole song where he asks himself, am I irredeemable? Am I uncoachable? It's hilarious.
The thing is, people who you think of as uncoachable, who are not responding to feedback, um, it's frustrating for you as the person who's trying to lead, to mentor, to consult with that person. But chances are they don't know that they're tough cookies. They don't wake up in the morning and say, how can I be a total stick in the mud at work today? How can I make everybody's day harder? And so we're going to offer just some ideas for how to work with tough cookies in your world. Because I actually think there is some magic to learning how to do that. And some of the most beautiful business relationships that I have seen have actually evolved from what was once a tough working relationship.
And I think that points to what we're talking about with the magic of working with tough cookies is it's a situation that starts out where you think it's like unfixable, untenable. This just isn't going to work. They'll never listen. But the reality of it, I think there are very few people that are truly uncoachable or you can't get through. There's just no room for connection. Um, I think more people are interested in finding a way forward than in being sticks in the mud. Like you said, nobody wakes up and thinks they're the problem. And so working with that fact is going to unlock new possibilities of creativity for you as a leader and new relationships that otherwise would have been kind of closed off.
Yeah. So a lot of the folks that we work with, we have a coach certification program, and it's really specifically meant for, any coach person who wants to coach could take it and will get a lot out of it because our tools are really good. The Super Bound tools are great. And we have a book behind
That's
me.
why we wrote the book.
So you can learn about those things. But really specifically, the training that we designed is meant for those who either coach leaders and executives, who are working with people who have a large impact on a lot of people in their company, or it's for people who are in leadership positions and want to lead through coaching. So instead of leading through micromanaging or leading through fear, they want to learn how to lead by empowering their team, by helping the people around them really grow and thrive and help them become amazing decision makers, problem solvers, experts in their world, which I do think personally, it is the best way to lead. And as coaches, it affords a really unique opportunity to actually not approach those who may be tough cookies or tough nuts to crack, however you word it for you, but to not see those people as problematic, but to actually see those people as opportunities to really clarify things like vision and values. So maybe before we kind of talk about how that works, I think the very first thing that can be humbling for leaders and folks that I've coached and people we've worked with over the years is if you think your whole team is made up of tough cookies, there's some bad news. It might not be that you got stuck with a quote unquote terrible team. It may actually be your leadership that has created some of these problems.
It's a tough pill to swallow, but it is the source of traction. The metaphor I use is like if you're running on ice and you're just like, why am I not getting anywhere? And then someone throws down some sand, some gravel, some grit, and you're like, okay, now I can get somewhere. That grit, that gravel is you realizing that you created some of the
A
dynamic,
team of tough cookies, perhaps, if you will.
right? And so, to whatever degree that's true, it might be 100% true, it might just be a little bit true. It gives you an entry point to have the power to change things. So, starting with the realization that the tough cookies in your life are partially your creation gives you leverage over developing those relationships.
And I know there's going to be a few of you out there at least who are going to say, listen, I do have a team full of tough cookies, but they are not my hires. They were the people that were handed to me when I got this job. I was brought in to specifically work with people who maybe don't have a strong team culture, maybe don't work well together, maybe don't have a clear expectation. And it's more of a company problem than a me problem. And I totally get that. But then for those of you where that may be the case, the opportunity for you is how can you be the person who, I don't want to be like, say you're a hero saving the day, but you kind of are, you can be sort of what was there's a spiritual saying and it's escaping me. If someone knows, please reach out and tell me, but it's the idea that like, sometimes the people who pose the biggest issues in our life are like our greatest spiritual teachers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like hearing that personally when it's about me, but when you are calm, you can see it as an opportunity to build resilience and to do the very first thing that we always start with our clients, and we train our coaches to do so as well, is to make sure that everybody on the team has a real felt sense of the vision of why they are doing what they are doing in their work.
Those are two of the best ways to open doors. Starting by asking yourself what your contribution to the relationship dysfunction might be and reflecting on what you can do to change it. And the most powerful place to begin is with what we're all here to do together. Making sure the folks who seem to be at odds with the team are actually aware of what it is their work is contributing to. So there's like your own reflection as a communicator, as a human being in relationship with other humans, and then to those leadership skills of setting a clear vision, setting a clear next lantern, right? The destination that we're all moving towards. When when you have a tough cookie who is a coaching client who's paying you for coaching, that's one thing because they have signed up for a kind of transformative container and they want that sort of feedback and uh, personal growth. When you have a tough cookie who just happens to be on your team, that's often when leaders will want to pull the pull the exit door. They're just like, just get me out of here. I'm not responsible for this. They're not going to listen. But that is also where you have the most, we could say, positional authority. A lot of people, because they don't want to experience conflict, will abdicate their positional authority and just chalk it up to incompetent folks and just complain about the incompetence on their team. And the question there is, well, who's allowing them to stay on the team and still be incompetent? There's only so far that the complaining will get you before you become the problem, where you are actually the tough cookie. So in a situation where someone is not living up to their expectations of performance, then it becomes a different kind of conversation about what you need from them and how they need to actually be performing in their role.
Yeah, so some folks as leaders or coaches will abdicate responsibility, and others will go in the opposite direction and micromanage. They'll say, this is what you do, and I want to check in every 15 minutes to make sure you're on task, which will bug the shit out of everyone who works with you, and it'll make them feel like children and probably won't get you a closer team dynamic going on anytime soon. So it's a tricky, tricky position for folks to be in, which is another reason why I think that coaching should be in every business's culture, because there has to be a container to be able to sit down with someone who maybe you're feeling some friction from and say, as your leader or as your coach, I want to talk about what I'm noticing when I interact with you. An approach that is actually really helpful that coaches that we train, at least we as coaches use, is instead of just making an assessment or an analysis about how someone else is feeling, where you look at someone and say, wow, you're in such a bad mood. I can tell you've got a bad attitude and everyone around here knows it. It's saying, I notice myself feeling tense because I see you sitting there with your arms crossed, and I notice myself wondering what you're thinking and why you're not sharing it. So I just want to make room in case there's something you did want to say. And it can be very challenging. We've spent a lot of time with our clients over the years, really kind of sometimes even role playing this, but it can be really challenging to not, as a leader or as a business owner, to jump in and know and have the answer and say, this is what you're doing and this is what I need you to do differently. It's a huge, huge challenge and does take some practice to be able to sit back and just reflect what you're noticing from the inside as a vulnerable sort of opening. I can't tell you how many times we've worked with teams where they will say that as they kind of explored this with someone who was maybe a tough cookie on their team, that the person was actually in a position of being defensive or challenging. That person actually felt a loyalty to the vision of the team and the company and just felt like things weren't being handled well. So I've noticed this even in clients who are in leadership positions where they feel like they are always known as the angry one or the one who is disrupting the whole meeting all the time because they're raising important things. They actually feel a sense of loyalty that's very deep to the vision of the company and feel like everybody else is just paying it lip service. So that's something, and that can be really interesting to do as a leader, is asking the person that you're coaching, mentoring, giving one-on-one feedback to, what they think the vision of the company is, how they are living the values through their work, how they are meeting expectations. So rather than coming at people and telling them what they're not doing, find out in their words what they think they are doing. It can be so eye-opening to see that sometimes the people who tend to fight back or challenge are doing so out of a really deep sense of loyalty to the company or the vision of what the company is there to do, or the organization, not always a company. Sometimes it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
What I hear you pointing to is the power of questioning your assumptions.
It's so hard to do.
It's enormous. It's one of the main things that we focus on in our coach training. Aaron actually created a nice acronym for it, being a CEO coach, being a CEO leader, which means, stands for curious, empowered, and open. And the foundation of that is knowing that you might be wrong. You might be wrong here. How am I wrong? Here's what I see. How am I wrong? That allows you to be curious rather than coming at someone like a ton of bricks and saying, you're doing it wrong. I know what's right. Kind of switching those tables and say, you probably think you're doing it right. And I'm probably seeing something differently. Help me see where this isn't correct. So sharing your assumptions in the spirit of let's get closer to the truth. Let's find out what's really happening. And this is actually where some of the personality assessments can come in handy. So if you don't do any work with, how do I work best? How do I communicate best? Whether it's Enneagram or DISC or Colby, Clifton Strengths, there's so many opportunities to understand more about where you're coming from and where a team member is coming from. They can be a little shallow at first, but if you use them and really work with them, they can be a source of depth and understanding, so that rather than thinking someone's always just an asshole because they're sit back and question things, realize, no, they really care. They just have a different way of approaching things, right? I'm more relational and they're more analytical, and relationships and analysis are going to sometimes blow up in a ball of fury. It'll be quiet fury if I'm coming from the relationship side. I'll just quietly judge. But the analysis side could also potentially be quietly stubborn because, well, I haven't seen the data yet. And that doesn't mean that person is against you. It just means we need to find some place to meet, because maybe we are on the same page, but it requires that building a bridge to say, what is the page that, what are we here to achieve? How do we know that we're getting closer? And then taking steps to actually get there together.
I love it. And it's so practical. And just because we like to talk about magic and spirituality as well, I do also, at the same time as you're kind of doing that practical work and you're thinking like a coach leader, there is also the opportunity for self-reflection of saying, even if it's not true, I'm not tied to this being the truth, and I don't think you should adopt this if it doesn't resonate with you, but it could just be a fun thought experiment to say, if this person really did exist in my world right now, in part to teach me something, if they were a teacher in disguise, what do I think they're here to teach me? It is a really interesting thought exercise. I've done this with people in my life in many different relationships, certainly not just in business. But it's that idea. If anyone remembers, there were some episodes we did on like $10,000 learning. If this situation full of friction and challenge and big puzzles were worth $10,000, $100,000, $1 million to me and this company, what learning could I find? What value could I be? And it doesn't have to be tangible dollar, but really just like finding what this is here to teach you. You know, we like to lift weights around here. We don't do that because it's easy. I certainly don't do it because it's fun, but I do it to get stronger. I do it because I know that the resistance and the effort of doing that will ideally help me be stronger as I age, as I enter my mid 40s almost. Um, is there an opportunity to see someone in your work life who's a tough cookie as that opportunity for you? Now, I want to be really careful. We're definitely not saying that you need to like put on a smiling face and like spiritually bypass and walk around all day saying, oh, what do all these assholes have to teach me? I have to keep them on my team forever because I haven't learned my lesson yet. This is not a punishment. I want to be so clear. You know, there are definitely times where it's just so clear that if you do this work with someone and you realize their vision is so opposite to what our company is trying to do or what our team is trying to do, their values are in complete conflict with what the values, the stated and lived values of what we are here doing really are for, yeah, it may be time to part ways with that person. But if there's an opportunity to learn, to grow, to make the communication on your team better, to create something amazing, especially if it's a talented, amazing person who actually, you know, all your customers love them, or you know, they bring something really unique and they're a little bit quirky and sometimes hard to communicate with. That is your privilege as a leader and as a coach, to figure out how to make it safe enough for that person to open up and make the relationship one that is amazing and collaborative and lucrative for everybody.
Yeah. And I think when we talk about the magic of working with a tough cookie, part of that is unleashing your own creativity.
Mm.
If you put that out as your challenge of the day, week, month, or year, you say, okay, we're gonna make this thing work. And you set yourself the challenge of coming up with 100 ways to build that bridge, to get more dynamism from that relationship, to help that person be as impactful as possible at your company. If you really said, okay, I'm going to set my creativity free on empowering this person and building that relationship and setting them up for success, how would that change your perspective on them? From why are they always foiling me to what an amazing opportunity to create a space for this talented person to be. So that's one side of that magic, is like unleashing your own creativity of leadership,
Mm.
of supporting somebody. And the other side, though, could be strengthening your commitment to a very high bar.
Mm.
Because sometimes tough cookies need to be shown the door. Sometimes there's not a place for them at your company if they are not a fit for the culture, if you've had enough of the conversations already, if you've already unleashed your creativity, but you find yourself being more afraid to let them go, or, you know, unsure of what you'll do without them, any of these reasons that we hang on to people way longer than we should as leaders, then that could be the magic for you, is um, how do you hold a high standard for your team in a way that is vision aligned and does not cater to your fear of, you know, what will happen to them, or what will everybody think of me, or what will happen to team morale, because people are already talking. If someone doesn't belong, if someone's not having a good time, if there is no place for them there but they're still there, it's already impacting morale.
As always, consult your HR professional before making any decisions. We're definitely not suggesting you walk around starting to fire people. But truly, like, that can also be something that is a really, I mean, it is an important thing to learn if you're leading. And that this also goes for coaches, you know, if you maybe have someone who is paying you and you think, I actually kind of disagree a little bit, Steve. If someone's paying you, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are 100% coachable. Some people don't know what coaching is and they sign up for working with someone and they don't like it. I have had people who tell me in the past, I had one person say, can you stop asking me so many questions? I thought you were here to tell me what to do. And I was like, nope, that is not what coaching is. Um,
Did you stop asking questions?
I stopped working with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just not a fit. We were close to the end and we completed our package a little early, and you know, they wanted me to solve their problems. And that is not what I do. Now, Superbound, we do some thinking partnership. And when we have expertise on something, if we are there to build a strategy with someone, we absolutely will. But we don't do people's work for them. We don't get on the phone and work with their employees. But it's a tricky thing. If you think that someone is hard to coach, I think I'm pretty good at this. I've had people tell me I am, so I'm gonna take their lovely words and hold them myself. You can also be the person in their life that creates space for them to actually just be exactly where they're at. Because if somebody is a tough cookie, chances are everyone around them is giving them a lot of feedback about how they want them to be different. And if you are the independent paid coach who's there to help them make a shift in their life to light an important lantern, your work with that person maybe isn't to change them to make them more acceptable to other people. It might be like, how do we do this in your most authentic way? There is something so healing that doesn't get talked about enough in the coaching world. There's something so healing about allowing people the space to be as they are without trying to fight with themselves, without them trying to make themselves sound smarter or better or happier, to actually let people exist with whatever's coming with them that day. And for you as the coach to be a safe container for that to exist and say, well, yeah, how do we create your dream life without having to fake a new personality? How do we create happiness and joy that's authentic to you without just painting a smiley face on? That is deep, deep spiritual work. So is business. So is leadership.
I mean, this is beautiful what you shared. Um, because there's something really judgmental in our title of the episode, and we did that on purpose. It's kind of fun because that's what goes through everybody's mind, right? It's tough cookie. But the real beauty, the real power of transformative coaching is embracing the person as they are. And the best leaders that I've worked with are the ones who I feel really saw me, and saw my strengths, saw my weaknesses, and said, hey, based on who you are and where you want to go, let's follow this path. And the updraft that I feel when someone really sees me, I'm sure I'm a tough cookie for, I'm sure I've been a tough cookie for plenty of people. Uh, and yet being she's nodding. That was a little too vigorous of a nod there, Aaron.
At times.
um, that embrace of, and I love you anyway. You don't have to have anything beyond the employer-employee relationship, but as a great leader, there's still a sense of love. There's a sense of connection, of
Human care.
yeah,
I can
of
call it.
care.
If love is too squishy
That's
for
too much
you.
for you. Yes, care. Real care looks like caring for who that whole person is, including, their own traumas and triggers as they manifest in being a tough cookie.
And the interesting thing from the coaching perspective on that is so many people try to improve themselves, whatever that means, through like self-loathing, through lack of self-worth. They're like, if I just get better, do better, am better, then I will be lovable to other people. And then maybe one day I might consider liking myself. The interesting thing, whether it's coaching as an independent practice or whether you are a coach leader who guides your people through the art of and science of coaching, when you do that, it is meeting people where they're at today, showing them what is possible when they actually open up and embrace more of who they are. Now, it doesn't mean, of course, that we're like letting people walk around in the office screaming at each other because like that's where I'm at today. It's not like an excuse for inappropriate behavior, but it just means that if you feel like someone on your team is resistant to an idea and maybe they have the habit of sitting through a meeting with stone cold faces, and then you get a 6-page email. I don't know how you would tell if an email was pages, a long email later on about why it's a terrible idea, but they never feel comfortable enough to speak up in the moment. That as a leader says, how can I make more space in those meetings to hear what we missed? Or maybe we do a follow-up of some kind. Is this person only communicating by email because there's no room for them, or do they need time to process what was said and they've been thinking about it? Like, how can I see that as an opportunity rather than here comes the long email from Carol, she never has anything to add in the meeting, but then I hear about it later on the weekend. There is an opportunity there if you are willing.
My first career was in music, and I love improvising. I love playing jazz. And there's a certain improvisational quality in what you're talking about there that you just respond to what's happening in the band in the moment. You're like, okay, we suddenly went double time. All right, how do I play over the double time? And you can also lead the session. You can lead, but you can't be heavy-handed because you've got everybody else who's playing their part as well. So um, part of the magic I would encourage you is think about other metaphors for what your leadership is like. For me, that 6-page email, however many pages it is
long scroll, the long scroll
the
email.
long scroll email is playing over some changes that were just freshly introduced. I'm like, okay, where's the magic here? Where is the beauty in this moment? And so whatever your outside the work kind of magical inspiration might be, you can bring that in a way that feels authentic to you and your leadership style.
And the final thing maybe we'll share here is I when I was coaching mainly on relationships, which I think a lot of what we're talking about today really leans on some of those tools that I saw and developed and worked with over the years with folks. The interesting thing to also remember for yourself as the coach and as the leader, so that you have grace and you're not just sitting there going, how did I create this horrible situation? That's not what we want you to do. But just remember that our human brains, the way I'll describe it, I'm not going to try and get into the brain science complicated stuff that we know or are learning, but one of the ways I sometimes will describe it is in order to not have to really hold the complexity of all of the people in our lives and all of the work that we have to do. Sometimes what we do is we kind of reduce people down to like cardboard cutouts of who they really are. And we start to like get to know the patterns of people. And then we just look at them and we say, oh, Cynthia is loud. John, pushy. Rachel, mad. Like we kind of reduce people down to some experiences that we've had with them. And then we only ever relate to people as though they are like life-size cardboard cutouts of themselves. It's really helpful. One skill, I think, if you're going to learn anything as a coach, the skill I think that is the most important is learning how to be authentically curious. because people grow, people change, people develop. And if you're only relating to someone in the way that you first met them or the way they were 6 months ago, you're missing having a relationship with the person who's in front of you today. So when you notice your assumptions coming through, when you notice yourself wanting to reduce that very complicated person down into a cardboard cutout version of themselves, try to get curious. Make it a game to actually get to know something about the person in front of you that you didn't know before. And it will help you stay flexible. It'll help you stay in relationship with the present version of them.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So hopefully today's conversation gives you some jumping off points for creating more magic in your life, especially if there's tough cookies in there, which, come on, we all have them. So we'd love to hear what you think. We're on Instagram and all the places. Let us know your thoughts, how this is going for you. And if you want to take some of these ideas further, we are offering a coach certification in September 2024. Head over to besuperabound.com/certification to learn more and apply to join that cohort. Take care, everyone.
Bye.